One. My first thought was that the aircraft was in distress, the officer wrote. I never realized when I saw that plane fly over 42nd Street the disaster that was about to befall our department and our country. The air was so filled with dust that I covered my mouth and nose with my tie as I said prayers that I would be spared. After a short period of time, I emerged from underneath the truck into a pitch-black darkness, barely breathing. My eyes were filled with dust. I was in extreme fear for my life. Nearly 3,000 innocent people were killed this fateful day, and we will never forget. Radical individuals and groups affiliated with Saudi exile Osama bin Laden were high on the list of suspected perpetrators. President Bush, in addressing the nation, stressed that the United States, in responding to the attacks, will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them. The president characterized the incidents as acts of war. Secretary of State Colin Powell called for a full-scale assault against terrorism and announced plans to launch a worldwide coalition against terrorism. These attacks threatened the livelihood of our people, and the war on terror formally began. The U.S. should protect its people at all costs, and so I affirm the resolution that resolved targeted killing as a morally permissible foreign policy tool. But first, let us define some terms. According to Matthew J. McCon, a major in the U.S. Army and Advanced Military Studies at the U.S. Army Staff College, defined targeted killing as the intentional slaying of a specific individual or group of individuals undertaken with explicit government approval. Additionally, morally permissible, according to Denny Elliott in Ethics in the First Person, means within the boundaries of a moral system, not required but allowed. And subsequently, morality, according to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, is defined as a code of conduct that, given specified conditions, would be put forward by all rational persons. Foreign policy tool, according to the Britannica Online Dictionary, is defined as general objectives that guide the activities and relationships of one state in its interactions with other states. One must look at this debate through the value of justice, defined by Merriam-Webster as the administration of law according to prescribed and accepted principles, and the value criterion of national security and the ethics of responsibility. Owen Harris, whose ideas were shaped by Max Weber, a German socialist and political economist, who influenced the social theory, research, and sociology itself, stated, while an individual is free to treat human rights as absolute, to be observed whatever the cost, governments must always weigh consequences and the competing claims of other ends. So once they enter the realm of politics, human rights have to take their place in a hierarchy of interests, including such basic things as national security and the promotion of prosperity. First and foremost, targeted killing is a solution to stop foreign threats and ensure that the lives of the citizens are safe. Robert A. Sully, in the Central Committee for Conscientious Objectors, wrote in his Handbook of Nonviolence, in moral reasoning, prediction of consequences is nearly always impossible. One balances the risk of an action against its benefits. One also considers what known damage the action would do. Thus, a surgeon in deciding whether to perform an operation weighs the known effects, the loss of some nerve function, for example, and risk, death, against the benefits, and weighs also the risk and benefits of not performing the surgery. Morally, however, human extinction is unlike any other risk. No conceivable human good could be worth the extinction of the race. These terrorist attacks endanger. This isn't complicated. There are no shades of gray here. Do we disapprove of car bombings and drive-by shootings or not? Do we consistently condemn state-sponsored extrajudicial killings as acts of pure terror, no matter where in the world or on whose orders they occur? Or do we shrug our shoulders, turn a blind eye, and continue our descent into lawless barbarianism? Manny Hassan, the New Statesman editor, stated this in regards to the humanity of targeted killing. We should not turn a blind eye and commit a crime against morality. And so, I negate the resolution and believe that targeted killing is not a morally permissible foreign policy tool. First, let us clarify some terms. The definition of targeted killing, according to its official definition given by the United Nations, is premeditated acts of lethal force employed by states in times of peace or during armed conflict to eliminate specific individuals outside their custody. The definition of morally permissible, according to Denny Elliott in Ethics in the First Person, means within the boundaries of a moral system, not required. Morality, subsequently, according to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, is defined as a code of conduct that, given specified conditions, would be put forward by rational persons. Foreign policy tool, according to Britannica Online, is defined as general objectives that guide the activities and relationships of one state in its interactions with other states. One must approach this debate from the value of the right to life, which according to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 6, every human being has this inherent right to life. The right shall be protected by law, and no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his life. And if the affirmative agrees with his value of justice, which giving each man what he is due, is not each man due his own right to life? In upholding the right to life, we do so by using the value criterion of democratic accountability, as not upholding this value criterion creates an illegitimate government. The role of a democracy, according to the Democracy Watch, is to hold other individuals and those in these organizations who are responsible for making decisions and taking actions fully accountable if their decisions or actions violate fundamental human rights or are dishonest, unethical, unfair, secretive, inefficient, unrepresentative, unresponsive, or irresponsible. And my affirmative, as he mentioned, his value criterion is giving each man his due, which is not an effective value criterion. First and foremost, targeted killing will undermine our democratic values. According to Richard Ashby Wilson, the Human Rights Director for the University of Connecticut, there can never be a warrant for the cold-blooded execution of a surrendered terrorist. If you wish to teach the people to reverence human life, as John Wright said in 1850, you must first show that you reverence it yourself. Terrorism succeeds if it tempts us to abandon our core values of democratic society, such as due process and rights to a fair trial. In the affirmative's contention 1, he mentioned that there are other alternatives and said that this would be the most effective. But, as it is proven, there are other solutions, such as arresting them and giving them the right to a fair trial, as it has been proven successful with certain terrorists such as Saddam Hussein. Every person deserves the right to a fair trial, including these suspected terrorists, as we have to make sure in a democracy to have certain proof. Leguzzi, the assistant professor of law at St. Thomas in the American Journal of Criminal Law, stated, "Why imperil the rule of law when the federal justice system works? In the prosecution of domestic terrorists, due process was not sacrificed. In federal criminal proceedings, national security concerns are protected. The Constitution is given its proper place, and attention is given to the achieving just outcomes. For example, the criminal bombing of the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma was an act of terrorism. The known perpetrators of these crimes were U.S. citizens. They were more than deviant criminals. They are politically motivated enemies of the state and of humanity, who deserve the severest of punishment. Criminal prosecution in the federal court system accomplished its purpose, and justice was done, without sacrificing the Constitution. It has worked in the past, and so too can work in the future. This upholds the right to life and allows for the U.S. to be responsible and promote our nation of democracy." In addition, targeted killing is ineffective. The affirmative mentioned in this contention too that that we have the right to self-defense, and yes, we do. But targeted killing is not the answer, as targeted killing also results in a large number of civilian casualties. Although the affirmative would not like to mention this. Byman, a director of research of the Center for Middle East Policy, who focuses on counterterrorism, stated, "After an arrest, security forces can interrogate the suspect and learn about future plots and additional operatives, who can then be arrested too. Killing suspects prevents them from striking, but dead men also tell no tales. If we want to do the best for our self-defense, why not arrest them and find out what we can in order to prevent from further terrorist attacks? Killing them does nothing, as the affirmative has no evidence that this has actually been more effective." Also, Michael LaGrosse from the Department of International Relations at the University of Haifa stated, "Other costs arise as troops carry out named killings and bystanders are killed, as ununiformed combatants are liquidated." Between September 29, 2000 and January 15, 2006, Israeli troops successfully targeted 204 named combat while killing 115 civilians. Are those casualties excessive or reasonable? For some, these numbers may represent reasonable levels of collateral damage, particularly as Israel makes considerable efforts to limit civilian casualties. Moreover, it may be that isolated missions, rather than Israel's policy in general, cause a disproportionate casualties. Nevertheless, claims of proportionality are pointless if the strikes are ineffective and bring additional costs and casualties. As this is a debate about morality, it is clear in my definition of morality that this is not a responsible foreign policy. It is clear that targeted killing is not morally permissible, as there are other solutions to terrorism, such as the right to trial, and targeted killing causes more harm to the citizens. In upholding the right to life in our democratic nation, we must ask ourselves the words of Abraham Lincoln and question, is this a government of the people, by the people, and for the people? If so, we have the right to know what our government is doing in regards to targeted killing, as it is immoral. As the affirmative mentioned in his value is justice. If giving each person his due, do we not have to give these people their due as well in a democratic society? And we should not turn a blind eye to these events. And so I negate the resolution.